Welcome to the SpiritWoke Podcast, podcasting from the beautiful city of Stillwater, the birthplace of Minnesota. Are you going through a spiritual awakening? Do you wish to learn more about continued spiritual growth and want to meet others who are on a similar journey? We hope that this podcast and its community can be a meaningful resource for you. The SpiritWoke Podcast welcomes special guests from around the globe who share personal stories of their awakening journey, along with details of spiritual abilities they've developed along the way. So buckle up and get ready for this exciting episode. And now, here's your host, Adam Dins.
Friends, welcome back to the SpiritWoke Podcast. Today's episode is a very special show for me personally, because we've got Brooke Tarrer, founder of the Universal Shamans of a New Tomorrow. To me, Brooke is a sister from another Mista, a guide, and someone I'm proud to call spiritual family. Soul family, if you will. Today, Brooke and I are going to be talking about sacred medicines, both plant and animal-based. We're going to talk about what they are, what they can do for you, and possibly dispel some myths and rumors. So, Brooke, thank you so much for joining the podcast. It is a true honor to have you on the show.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for the warm welcome.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you, and we're really grateful for your time, and we're grateful for your knowledge on this topic. We have yet to discuss sacred medicines on our show, so you're going to be our first, and we're really excited for you to be our premiere on this. So fantastic stuff. I can't wait to dig in and pick your brain and ask all the questions that everyone listening may have.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So, Brooke, one of the things I like to ask all of our guests on the show, and really helps us set a baseline so, those who are listening can hear different people's stories and just see who they identify with, or maybe even just get a sense that, hey, there's not just one kind of awakening that we go through. It's really personal for all of us. And so can you tell our audience a little bit about your spiritual awakening? What sparked it?
As long as we have time. Yes, I can, brother. Honestly, it really started kind of basic in 2007. It's really kind of weird that a lot of people share the same beginning background of where things got started. It's almost like a large group of those who have been awakened for a while kind of began the same way. And that was simply with The Secret. Literally just, I don't know if you know about The Secret, the whole law of attraction. So I started with the book, then I went to the movie, and then from The Secret, basically I was just like, you know what? Here's my intention to the universe. And that is, if this is real, I want to know, how is it real? And that was pretty much of a key question. And it obviously showed me. And from there, it was What the Bleep Do We Know? And Abraham Hicks. And it was et cetera, Bashar, you name them, Cryon, all of these spiritual teachers. But then I got to this one book where all of the spiritual teachers combined basically all pretty much said in so many words, if a book falls in front of you at a bookstore, buy it. Don't ask questions. It's for you. You wrote it. Period.com, another version of yourself is throwing this at you. And so I did. And that book was called Earth, Plating Keys to the Living Library. And from the moment I started reading that book, I began getting downloads of information that was just not of this world. And my family thought I was crazy, did a whole intervention. My world just literally turned completely upside down from that moment on. And they were just working with me and making a huge leap of literally just adjusting to them working with me, which basically me understanding or coming to the understanding that they were literally working with my consciousness and learning how to understand when they were talking to me, when they were not talking to me, when it was just my thoughts and not theirs, and trying to, decipher the whole thing. It was that alone felt pretty crazy. But literally we would have to jump from 2008 all the way to 2015. And that was when I was just kind of calming everything down and learning how to really live with this and adjust to it. And so I branched out and started to go to the very first Houston CE5 group. Are you aware of CE5?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Oh, wow. Okay. So CE5 it was formed by Dr. Stephen Greer, and he is basically he's very connected with all of the ETs and the ET movement that's happening now, and the awakening as far as connecting with higher consciousness, with
Yep.
a higher intelligence, basically. And so he's very involved with that. And so he created CE5, which is the close encounters of a fifth kind, which basically you bring the collective together and you connect to the ETs through collective consciousness. So we meditate together, we bring them in. So fast forwarding a little bit, we had our very first meeting, the Houston CE5 group, and there was a shaman there. And I was like, you're kidding me, a shaman? That's interesting. So we basically, the shaman was doing a lot of his energy work. There was no medicine involved, nothing like that. But he was doing a lot of his shaman work. And the next thing you know, all of a sudden, and people were complaining in the background, he's not following protocol. This is not CE5 protocol. But all of a sudden, we were connecting. We were connecting through ETs basically from the 8th dimension. And that was channeled through one of our members that were there. So skipping forward a little bit more, he at one point, so I was telling everyone, listen, they're here, let's go. And they weren't here like spaceships and, all the whole, like, people think of ETs, they think of like the grays, nothing like that. They were here just in lights. The 8th dimension doesn't have a physical appearance. So they were here in lights that were literally shooting out from way deep in the forest into the tree lines where we were kind of maybe 50 feet from. Wow. And so I was excited. I was like, let's go. Like, who's coming with me? Like, let's come on, you guys. And everybody thought I was crazy. They're like, you're kidding me, right? Are you insane? And I was like, no, you're kidding me. Like, why did we come call them here if you're not going to go see them? And so anyhow, David Dale, at that point, he's a shaman. He said, do you really want to go out there? And I said, yes. He said, okay, well, let's go. And so he took my hand. We walked out to the tree lines, and they just surrounded us with this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful light. And I say beautiful light, but it was my first real experience of a medicine type experience, but without medicine. And it was with him, who is a shaman. And it was very much of a deeper comprehension of who we are, what we are, just really profound, a lot of emotion. I when we walked back, I was in tears. Anyhow, so halfway back, he basically stopped me and he said, hey, my name is David. What's yours? And I said, my name is Brooke. And he said, well, you could call me Maestro because I'm going to be your teacher. And I was like, oh, well, okay. And the next day, literally, he just began to teach me. And it was all about, shamanism and how that all happened. We had several CE5 meetings following CE5 protocol without David Dell there. Maybe 4 or 5 that I attended. And there was never contact made. And yet I was able to see how he was making all this progression through everything he was teaching me. I was able to see how we were able to connect. And so it really created a clearer picture to me about why shamanism is so absolute and so important and so dimension jumping type of thing. It's so hard to explain. Anyhow, so yeah, that's pretty much where both my spiritual awakening kind of went on full speed, and at the same time USNT kind of formed, because USNT ended up being, we started as Houston CE5, and then there were those who wanted to stick to protocol and then those who wanted to go deeper. And so I started USNT and we went deeper.
Wow, that's awesome. Maybe we'll be fortunate enough to have you back to talk a little bit more on a different episode about that experience with the ETs and what that was like, and really dive into that, because I think our audience would love to hear more detail about that. So if you're ever game, we'd be honored to have you back to talk about that subject for sure.
Yeah, brother, awesome. I would love to.
Okay, cool. All right, you heard it, folks. She's verbally agreed to it. Brooke's verbally agreed. So now we get her back for at least one more episode. So through this USNT organization that you formed, you started getting into sacred medicine. And so, and that's what the show today is about. And so I'd love to just, pick your brain and ask you, what is sacred medicine? And, a lot of us here are our hope is to develop spiritually. So how can that sacred medicine help us develop spiritually?
I guess my return question would be, how could it not? It literally makes my heart smile when people ask questions like that, because it's just beyond it. The medicine is, I'm sure you've heard time is simultaneous. There's no future, there's no past. It's all here, it's all now. Which basically, if you really get that on a soul level, then you understand your ancestors, both past and future, are literally you, on a different timeline, and it's all here now, So with that understanding, I mean, this is literally us saving ourselves. This is us planting these seeds, us creating these permission slips, and putting them here in this now, because this now is what is changing things. This current now, this current timeline it's an absolute, but like there's prophecies, and there's several prophecies. It's not just one. It's all directly correlated and connected with the December 21st, 2012, where the consciousness was altered at that point. And I mean, there's so much detail. I mean, that is a whole nother show, but I'm not the expert on that one. I'm just letting you know that it is all like this timeline that we're currently in is an absolute, and it is a game changer for literally the world. And so that being said, what is sacred medicine? It's our key. It's our permission slip from ourselves to wake up. It's also Pachamama. Pachamama being the name for Mother Earth, is her gift, to us, to save herself. When you look at the bigger picture, it's all fully connected. It's all fully connected. Like, we are the earth. The earth is us. Like, we are the children of the earth. We're literally trying to save ourselves. And this is the time that we do it, and this is one of many. Don't get me wrong. This isn't the only one, but this is one major way to literally stop people in their tracks and wake them up.
So, Brooke, when you say that it's our attempt, or it's our opportunity to save ourselves, right? Or save. What do you mean by that? Like, what are we saving ourselves from? What are we saving the earth from? Are we? Can you go into a little bit of detail on that?
Yeah, I totally can. So, and I'm going to be really direct, because I try to tell people all the time, and I've learned the hard way, you have to be absolute with people, because if you're not absolute, then they can get confused. So saving yourself from, honest to God, like, ask yourself, do you believe you were born to go to work 9 to 5 and come home and raise children to do the same thing? Like, do you believe that your children should be being taught in a system that's still based on the 1800s? Sorry, I used to be a school teacher, so it's, I'm still, I couldn't even understand why I was doing it. I couldn't understand why I went to college for so long to get a degree to do something that just was literally horrifying. I mean, looking back now, it's horrifying. Back then, it was just, it doesn't make sense. Like, there's no point to this. Like, what are we trying to get to? Like, where are we going? We're going in circles. We're chasing our own tails and not even aware of it. It just doesn't, it's just absolute mayhem. Honestly, it's not life, this is the pre-life is what I like to call it. This is the before you wake up. This is getting to the point where you die and wake up and be alive again. You have to go through this process of losing who you really are in order to wake up to who you really are. So right now, the world, I feel personally, is in that process of being completely dead and completely numb to who they are, to what they can do.
Someone saving themselves is waking them up to who they truly are, and to kind of break the pattern, if you will, or break the cycle of just kind of living unconsciously, right?
Right. Because if we all just allowed spirit to say, okay, here you are, you were born. And if you allow yourself to remember who you are, which is very simple, if you're not born into a system that the society is about, you can easily find who you are because you're not forced to study this and this and this. You're just allowed to fulfill your passion, So with that understanding, if everyone just followed their passion and were literally living the whole purpose of why they are here, this would be heaven on earth. When we die, there's no heaven to get to. We're here. We're in heaven right now, period. And we're either going to live it or we're going to let it go. It's just, and then we'll come back again and try to make it again. And it's silly because we're here, we're living this heaven. And some people, I'm not bragging. This is not ego. This is just absolute truth. I am literally in my heaven, but I don't leave this land much at all, because I'm surrounded by people who understand this, who are working towards this, who are waking up to this. And it's beautiful because, we're doing it together as a family, and we're doing it not for ourselves and not for each other, but for all of humanity. We're doing the work on our end, and we're very associated with all kinds of other shamans and groups that are doing the work on their end, so we know it's happening. It's not a question of, is it even ever going to take place? No, it's written, it's prophecy, it's already done. We're already seeing it. We literally have front row. We're watching it happen, and it's not going to get tearful. It's just beautiful. It's beyond me. It's beyond me, and I'm just so grateful to even be a part of it.
Yeah, understood. And just to give our listeners a little bit of context, Brooke and the USNT have a beautiful stretch of land just outside of Houston where it's very peaceful and serene, and they've got it's a little slice of paradise on earth. So when she says that she doesn't leave, there's a good reason not to. Okay, Brooke, I've got a question for you. So you mentioned frankly, your awakening story is kind of mind blowing, and I don't know that I've heard one that's that can rival it per se. Not that we compete with awakening stories, but so if you wouldn't mind sharing with the audience, you talk about sacred medicine and how does sacred medicine help you continue to evolve? Because and I say I'm talking about you personally, because you had such a powerful awakening experience, and you kind of allowed yourself to progress after that awakening experience. So how does plant medicine, animal medicine play into that? How did that work for you?
I can start with this. I literally was at the time when all of that happened with C5 and us becoming USNT. And during that time, I was in downtown Houston living in a high rise. I thought I had it made. I was in a concrete jungle. I could look out and literally see, that was my alarm clock, 5 a.m. The lights of the work building across the way all the lights would turn on at 5 a.m. and it would wake me up. And because I had all windows, and I loved it. I thought I loved it. I had no idea. But that was my life. And I was a school teacher doing the whole 9 to 5 thing. And I thought that was life at that point. And when medicine really became the sacred medicines, when that became alive in my life, I mean, we are talking maybe 3 months of constant ceremonies. And when I say constant, I'm talking 2 back-to-back, maybe 4 times at that point. The next thing I know, I mean, I was just basically being taught by ayahuasca how to flow, how to relax and trust what was happening, because I was very confused. I was very knowing that there was something way more to life, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I didn't understand, and I knew that USNT had a lot to do with it, but I didn't know how. And so I just learned how to flow. And once I did that, spirit completely took over. I was watching spirit work through me, even though it didn't feel like a lot of the work was coming from me. I was just being directed and fulfilling whatever it was. And then that was instantly, gratified. I tried to continue being a teacher because I did not know how I would financially be able to support myself and USNT just, by having ceremonies. And so as I was trying to get a job as a teacher in Porter, we used to have our location in Porter. That was our first land. And then we grew out of it. But at that point, I was still trying to control everything. I was still trying to direct my life. I thought that I was the one that was supposed to be figuring everything out. And spirit taught me different. I mean, basically, the way I can explain the medicine in a nutshell is you think you know life. You think you know how spirit works. And it's almost like I say she because So
I say she too.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. We always put her on the back burner, like, oh, I should go to church on Sunday, or I should, nah. Like the whole bigger picture of spirit is we're the ones on the back burner. Spirit's the river and our bodies are a raft floating on her, and every time we try to control something, we're paddling upstream. It makes no sense. We're fighting against the natural current of who we are and where we're supposed to be, just by thinking that we have to figure everything out. We have to figure out how we're going to pay this and how we're going to do this. So with your question being, like how the medicines have changed everything, I mean, I'm literally living my dream now. And I had no idea that this was even a dream, I mean, it's bigger than I could have ever imagined. And it's more beautiful than I can ever imagine, and all I do for a living literally is watch people come here to our home and their whole lives change, and then they get to start their journey and I get to watch it all over, through them and see, oh my God, look at their path. Like, wow, like that one's amazing, and they're also amazing. There's no little story that comes from this, it's always major changes and major just absolute turning inside out of someone's life. And they realize who they are and they realize why they're here. And then they release the oars, on the river of spirit, and they flow. And she takes them wherever they were, born to be. And it's amazing what's happening. It's amazing. But that being open to spirit, that's all through the medicine, and again, I know there's countless ways because it's happening all over, and it's not just through plant medicine. It's in several different ways, So I would encourage anybody, like if you're not into plant medicine or if that's never been something you would consider an option, there's countless options, I couldn't name many off the top of my head, but I know that there are, because the shift is completely upon us. I mean, it's active, and it's constant, and it does not stop. So the world is changing, and we are a huge part of it. And yeah, so one of the ways to connect completely with spirit and just get on that flow to your purpose and what you're supposed to be here doing is through plant medicine, but not the only way, but it is one way.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine a few weeks ago who, she's been working a lot with ayahuasca, and so I offhandedly asked her if she had ever read Dr. Joe's book on becoming supernatural, and she goes, "Oh yeah," she goes, "I absolutely do, and I've gone to some of his workshops and conferences, and yeah." So I was asking if she was doing those meditations to try to open herself up to all the things that Dr. Joe talks about in becoming supernatural. And she goes, "You know what, Adam?" She goes, "Frankly, I don't have the time, and that's why ayahuasca is such a fantastic option for me, because I don't have 3 hours a day to be sitting and meditating. I've got things I'm responsible for in life." And I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting, because I don't know if people think about it that way from a plant medicine perspective, and that's not really a reason per se why people should rush out and do plant medicine, but." From what I understand, the time to realization, if you will, is so much faster, can be so much faster on plant medicine than, say, through some of the more traditional meditation, and and kind of opens that door quicker.
No, absolutely, brother. And I've got chills while you say that too, because just thinking of all the people that have said so many different things. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone. And they all love to tell me and everybody else about them. And I respect them all. But there's one that is, it's like, well, it's very Americanized. And that opinion is, you've got to do the work. Well, if you have that opinion, then yeah, you've got to do that work. And that is a lot of work. I can't even fathom how many years it would take me of meditation to get where ayahuasca or bufo takes me immediately. I can't even fathom. However, I understand that's absolute, because these medicines, these sacred medicines they're already in us. The medicine, the activation, it's already in us. So anything we experience with the medicine, we do have in ourselves. And so, yeah, that's why I also call the medicine, it's like a permission slip from Pachamama to skip ahead, to fast forward to, where it is you're wanting to go spiritually. And I believe wholeheartedly the reason we have these permission slips to kind of fast forward is because we're not in a space right now. I mean, you look at the world, my God, no offense to any of your listeners, but Donald Trump is president, like, seriously? That, to me, that it still boggles my mind. So I think there are times where we need that fast forward. And this is absolutely a time, because we don't have the time to sit and meditate and contemplate. And right when we're, say, 80 years old, we had enough meditation where one ayahuasca ceremony takes us, where one bufo ceremony takes us. And then what? Because then you're 85, 90. And what are you going to do with that? You know what I mean? What are you going to do with that? Because, it's your time to go. And it's just, I don't know. To me, I get it. The whole work for it. But at the same time, I feel like our work is needed somewhere else. We need to get there. We need to understand who we are. We need to understand what we're capable of. And then do the other work,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So Brooke, can you talk, and we'll keep this question brief, because I really want to get into bufo, because I know bufo is kind of newer on the scene, and doesn't have, it's growing in popularity, obviously, but doesn't necessarily have the same sort of, history as, say, ayahuasca or peyote or some of the other sacred medicines out there. But before we get into Bufo, could you talk just briefly about some of the different types of medicines and what they do? Because, there's just so many.
Yeah, I can. So I'm going to start with that. Just basically listing off the ideas. Like, this is the best way I was ever told by my maestro, David Dale, the guy from the beginning, C5. When he explained this, it really made perfect sense. So the idea is, if you look at your body as a vehicle, and the body that you have as a vehicle, it's this whole world is based in duality. The whole reason we're able to experience ourselves and each other, because we're all one. But the way we're able to do that is through duality. I mean, from the basics of, you can't have a male unless you have a female. You can't have up unless you have down. You can't have this energetic field that we're experiencing ourselves in unless you have the North and the South Pole holding it in balance, So everything is based on duality, and therefore we have these vehicles to experience duality. Well, that's the only way we can do it. So immediately we're thrust into, God and Satan and evil and good. And so it gets crazy with all of that. But once you kind of navigate through that and you get to the point of taking in a separate consciousness. So the person or the you that you think you are, that you're assuming you are, like, you're Adam, that's how you see yourself. Which that should be pretty easy because Adam, Eve, So you're the first man. But so the idea being is you've got this vehicle to navigate in this reality that is just all you and it's just all one. But there's these keys, going back to us being our own ancestors in past and future, that we planted here to wake us up, to speed up the process, And that being said, when you ingest this medicine, it is literally conscious. Therefore, you're the driver. Adam, being the driver of the vehicle, takes the back seat of the vehicle, of your body. You can still see out the eyeballs, the window, but the consciousness that's now taking the vehicle, that is now the medicine taking the vehicle. And so our ancestors named these consciousnesses for us to understand their abilities, their gifts to us. So that being said, it's easier to understand, for instance, mushrooms, which are sacred medicine. Okay, so mushrooms, they were named Niños Santos. So Niños Santos, that's in Spanish, that's little children. Okay, so when you take in the mushrooms, you ingest the mushrooms, you're literally ingesting the consciousness of you, little childlike. You go back into a discoveries area of life. The colors are more pretty. You laugh a lot because you're more relaxed. You're not thinking about the bills, and you're not thinking about, the rent and mortgage. You're just back to that childlike state, which is very healing in so many ways. It's easy to understand when you understand that the name of consciousness for the mushrooms is Niños Santos, little children. When you understand it's little children, you can understand so easily why microdosing the mushrooms is so healing for depression. Because how can you be depressed as a child? It's really cut and dry. But so going from there, then you have ayahuasca. And ayahuasca, I laugh because of spirit and because we're smart as our own ancestors. We didn't name anybody like Middle Ages. we skip from like little children all the way to Walita, which is grandmother. That's ayahuasca. So if you understand ayahuasca and the experience of ayahuasca, when you ingest her consciousness, then that's Walita, the grandmother. She's the wise one. She's very feminine in her energy. She wants to heal you. But she's feminine in many different ways. She gets jealous. She's very, very feminine, but she's very loving with all her heart. She is there to dig out all of the stuff that you need, out of your body. Like, she understands where to go, what to do, and she'll do it, you know? So then you have Abuelito, which is grandfather, and that's both of the masculine medicines. That's going to be San Pedro, which is Wachuma, and Peyote. So with the grandfather medicine, that's very much of a masculine form of ayahuasca. You know, so these medicines are going to take you to that same intensity of ayahuasca. However, it's going to be much more of a masculine feel. There's a lot of love there, but it's different because it's like opening your chest cavity and just like having no barriers between you and love, just pounding your heart. You know, it's very different. You can understand really well when you do ayahuasca and San Pedro or Peyote ceremonies kind of back to back or close together. You can begin to understand the clarity of the truth of the masculine and feminine energies and how they work in your life and which one you need to kind of balance out more. I always thought I needed more masculine, and it turned out I needed much more feminine. You know, it's like once I started doing the medicines, I was like, oh my God, I get it. So that's kind of a brief on that. Then you have Yopo. Yopo is Grand Espiritu, which I forget how they say that in Spanish. I just remember it's Grand Espiritu. Oh, that is Spanish. Great Spirit, basically, where you go immediately to your higher self, and that higher self, the Grand Spirit, just literally takes you time traveling. You know, it's very in touch with past and future and how it all connects to you with your life. So, you know, that's very much of a huge healing aspect in so many ways because it can really bridge the gap. So it's like you can be trying to heal something currently in your life and you just can't pinpoint it. You know, you just can't figure it out. But it's because time is simultaneous. So you've got a past you and a future you that is really battling because there's some kind of misunderstanding and you're skipping over it in your current life. And so Yopo kind of bridges that gap. You know, it's the seer, your personal spirit, higher self, seeing the bigger picture, and it kind of bridges that gap. Then you have Bufo. And the consciousness of Bufo is named Dios. And in Spanish, Dios is God. So, enough said.
Yeah, that's a perfect lead in. And thank you for that. That was so well articulated, you know, because you just hear so much about the different medicines and, you know, there's shows here and there that, you know, kind of focus on each one. But, you know, like it's great just to kind of see everything lined up, if you will, in the way you explained it. It was really helpful and very clear. So thank you for that. And you left off on Bufo, which is I'm really excited to get your perspective on Bufo. So Bufo Alvarius is actually a medicine that is not plant based. Although and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong on this. It is found in some plants, but really where this comes from is from the Bufo Alvarius toad, the Sonoran toad, and it's become very popular as of late. There's Mike with the Mike Tyson video, or Mike Tyson talks about his experience, and you know, Joe Rogan podcast. You know, lots of stuff on Bufo on the Joe Rogan podcast, but you know, when you Google it and you search for things. You read so many different perspectives and thoughts and insights, and it can get really confusing. And so I just, you know, wanted to ask you because you are, at least in my mind, the ultimate point of source of trust or source of information on this, trusted information. What is Bufo Alvarius? What does it do, and how is it different than other sacred medicines?
Well, you know, for starters, you know, again, going back to the idea of you're literally taking in the consciousness of God, right? And so a lot of people are like, oh, that's pretty much impossible. And it's not. Actually, it's the truth of Bufo is the absolute comprehension of who you really are, and that there is no separation between you and God. that you are God. Bufo doesn't try to hide it. They don't, there's no covering it up. I mean, it's absolute, and it's absolute truth, and it's beyond anything in this world. I mean, honest to God, it's beyond, I mean, when you understand going back home to the truth of who you really are. I mean, of course, ayahuasca has a lot, ayahuasca is beautiful. She's healing. Ayahuasca is what we started with as USMT, and wouldn't exist if it weren't for, ayahuasca. We wouldn't be here. So, I mean, I have so much gratitude to all of the medicines, but Bufo can literally, I mean, when you get to the heart of the matter of why am I here? Who am I? What's going on? Why, why are we living in heaven that we're here to create together? And we've created this crazy place where people they feel like they have to work to be alive. And yet they didn't ask to be alive. It's all of this craziness. Bufo just brings it straight to you and shows you don't have to. Just stop the madness, stop the craziness. It doesn't matter what other people are doing around you, because they're you, and it starts with you. And that is the clearest message I think that anyone can really get from Bufo, is it stops when you stop, because there's no separation between you and every person around you in the ceremony. And the moment you leave the ceremony space, there's no separation. You are them. They are you. It starts with you. You have to literally do it. And I'm not talking be the change you want to see. No, you are the change. Bufo shows you this is it. This is it. You are God completely. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but just do Bufo. You'll see. There is no qualms about that. It is an absolute understanding, and it scares a lot of people. Let me go into the scientific version a little bit, because it will help understand or help the understanding of any other things, like with what actually happens. Bufo, the chemical that is Bufo, which I don't like talking about the medicines with chemicals, but with Bufo, it is kind of important for people to understand that it is actual death. Basically the chemical that's released in the pineal gland at the moment of death, it's released at, the largest amount in your life, because it's always secreting in your dream state and things of this nature. But the time it is secreted the most, which is the same amount of Bufo that you're given in ceremony, that is exact same chemical and the exact same amount that is released in your pineal gland at the moment of death. So you're literally dying, and you die and you experience quote unquote death. And then, but your heart still beats. You see, there's no, you come back. But when I say come back, once you've experienced Bufo, you realize you never leave. You were never born. You were never, there's no death. There's no birth. There's just, this is it. You are all of it. And you can't stop. You are infinite. Honestly, I'll just be straight with you. One of the biggest things that I've had hard times with, just grappling with my own mind, knowing it's just a mind, and it's silly to even think of it like a mind, but we're human, right? So we've got to think about stuff. So the hardest thing I've had to grapple with after so many Bufos is we're never going to be done. Like, you just can't do it. There's never going to be an ending. There was never a beginning. You're never going to actually rest. We think we rest in the physical body, but we really don't. But I'm getting way too deep. The idea being is, we never stop. We are literally infinite. But when that understanding is clear, to you, then everything is possible. You understand, I can create anything, I can have anything, and heaven on earth is not just a possibility, it's already here. It's just that I don't understand that. I don't realize that. But now I do. I see that it's only my own beliefs of what is possible and what I can do about it. That's the only thing stopping heaven on earth in this moment. And it changes you.
So let me ask you this question. I know with ayahuasca, some people who take ayahuasca the first time don't really have call it a deep or a mystical experience, if you will. With Bufo, if somebody does it, let's just say once, they do it the first time, do they still leave with the understanding, Brooke, that you just shared, or does Bufo need to kind of peel the layers off before someone's able to get to that point where they're seeing that we're, as you said, that there is no beginning or end, it's infinite, that we're all one?
Right. No, I completely understand your question. I'm so glad that you asked it. In fact, I'm going to use that with a lot of people because it's so absolute. So the idea being is with ayahuasca, a lot of people, they come in with expectations. They don't know the power of their own mind. They don't know the power of themselves as creator, and that's literally what gets in the way of having an experience the very first time with ayahuasca. Their own expectations, literally, again, ayahuasca can be very much of a jealous medicine. Their expectations will stop her from, showing them, and they're also stopping themselves. However, with Bufo, no matter what, everyone that has a Bufo experience is going to, the very first time, they're going to know for a fact that they had a major life-changing experience, and their life will change accordingly, regardless of what they remember. However, the first time is so overwhelming, it's hard to remember all of the, kind of like the key points, the main idea of this is really it. This is absolute truth. Just the nitty-gritty of Bufo comes, I would say, for me personally, it was between my third, fourth time, and I did my third and fourth Bufo ceremony back to back because God love him, I did. He's our Bufo shaman, but he decided to give me my third and fourth back to back, and it was, immediately following my fourth that I was clear as day. Like I was able to retain 100% memory of not all of the information coming to you in that moment, but I was able to retain enough to where I could completely try my best, at least, because there's no language with Bufo. You can't. That's the most common thing you hear after Bufo is there's no words. Like I have no words to express it. And there literally isn't. There's not a language. There's not a vocabulary that can express what you just experienced. But the memory of that is it's something. Some people have it immediately after their first experience, but the majority of people, it takes a few times. And the more you experience going into the Bufo, the more you retain memory-wise. So, it doesn't take that much, though. It's maybe 3 or 4, and you begin to hold those memories. And the reason for that is overwhelming. Okay, so the first Bufo, the second Bufo, you're so overwhelmed with information that you can't hold it all in, and your brain just says, no, stop. Like, I'm just shutting down now. Like, I'm just going to shut down, and I'm not going to go further because it's too much. It's just too much. A lot of people ask me, do you purge, vomit? with Bufo. It's not a purgative medicine at all, like ayahuasca is. However, people will purge from overwhelmment, just being so overwhelmed with so much information. So the mind does this little trick where it will shut down. And that's what's shutting down the memory. Your access to the memory is just your mind saying, nope, no more. I'm not going to take any more information. I'm shutting down. And it shuts the memory down as well. That's not a scientific view. I just on the spot. I'm saying it because I just, from my own experience, I really believe that that's what it's about. However, again, third, fourth time, you're able to retain the memory, and that's across the board. And I've seen thousands of Bufos given by Madhu. So it's completely across the board. The memory is retained of the experience after, say, third, fourth Bufo. You're able to really maintain not so much the state, that takes a little bit more, but the memory and knowing exactly where you went, even though you didn't go anywhere. But to be able to see it clearly and to talk about it clearly, you know?
Yeah.
And one thing I want to add while it's on my mind fresh, one way you know for a fact that Bufo is absolute when it comes to the experience of death is because it's not, that's how it's, well, I guess it's going back to that question. The original question is, how is it different from the other medicines? The Bufo, when you experience Bufo and you're in this ceremony, the moment you begin to kind of go, your life is going, basically. It's not a new place. It's not a shocking place to be. It's absolute remembrance. There is a clear remembrance. You've been there, and a part of you, the main part of you, that is who you truly are, has never left there. You're just kind of fading back into the absolute source that you are. And so it is clear remembrance, just like, unlike other medicines where it can be really, really scary because you're going into a state and you're not aware of it. This is kind of a literal first time. With Bufo, the moment you surrender to the medicine and you allow yourself to go completely, it is an absolute state of remembrance. It is who you truly are. You've been that whole source for eternity, literal eternity. And you've been this you that's now experiencing that, you think, for the first time. But that little you, that's just like a tiny little pebble of sand in an infinite beach. You see what I'm saying? That has never left that space. So the remembrance is really strong. And that's how you know immediately, oh, this isn't scary. This is who I am. Well, of course, that's once you surrender. And that's a huge part of the memory that comes with time through doing the Bufo that, a lot of people won't remember it the first 2-3 times from having, this blessing of Bufo experience. However, with time or, with more ceremonies, you are able to hold that memory and remember that you remember, it's just beautiful.
Yeah. That, so one last question on that, and I want to be cognizant of time here, but the last question on that is, from what I'm comparing it to ayahuasca, because ayahuasca obviously being the most, call it not pop culture, I hate to refer to it as that, but there's the most shows on it, right? You watch Kentucky Ayahuasca, there's people know about it. But with ayahuasca, from what I understand, this may not be true, but if say you do ayahuasca the first time and you don't experience anything, from what I understand, it takes, like, if you wait a year or 2 years to do it again, it's not as effective as if you were to do it like sooner than that. And so I don't know if that's true, but is that how does that work with Bufo? Like, if you do it once and then say you come back and do it, like say you do it 2 or 3 years later, is there like an additive effect there, or is it almost like starting over again in terms of getting to that place of remembrance?
No, it's not. The time factor with Bufo isn't a factor, because remember, with Bufo, you're going into an absolute state of no time, so there's not a factor at all when it comes to like how consecutive is it, a lot of the medicines are, again, like you said with ayahuasca, needs to be pretty consecutive. Now, I cannot speak from experience because I've been blessed enough to have, USNT and to be pretty consecutive with my Bufo experiences and with Aya and all of the other medicines. But with Bufo, from what I can tell you from my experience, I've seen several people come once and then wait a year and come again. And there's no like lapse of time. They go deeper. They remember more. They're able to hold on to more when they come out of Bufo, regardless of the time that's lapsed between ceremonies, Yeah, which is a blessing, I think.
Yeah, no, it's an absolute blessing. So, well, listen, we are already at the hour mark, and hard to believe that time goes so fast, especially when we're talking about Bufo, where there is no time, right? So we had an hour ago, but there's no such thing as an hour in Bufo time. But let's just leave it here. Brooke, is there anything that you'd like to promote coming up that you'd like the listeners to know about?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have, the top of my head, we've got ayahuasca ceremony coming up with our kawa. That's going to be August 2nd and 3rd. Then we have, which is really amazing, we have Taita Crispin Chindoy, who is literally one of the original Taitas of Colombia, who has trained, basically the Taitas give their blessings to all of the other, what we call Taitas, but this is the Taita that has given the blessing to the majority of the Colombian shamans that come here to give the medicine. He is one of the original sources of that. So he's direct lineage for the ayahuasca, which in Colombia is Yahe. However, he will be here. We switched from the end of August to, I believe it's going to be September 14th to 15th. If I don't have a calendar in front of me, but either 14, 15 or 15, 16 of September is Taita Jindoy. And then we will have other ones that are not absolute yet. We don't have like the dates situated. We do have a peyote ceremony coming up within this time frame as well as Yopo. But our next big one, which is the Bufo Ayahuasca combination, is November 1st and 2nd, and that's with Taita Pedro of Colombia and Maduanan of Mexico. So that's a really, really big one, and we always try to encourage everyone to take advantage of that, because the marriage between those two medicines are really beautiful, and it's hard to get those two together. So keep those dates in mind, all your listeners, November 1st and 2nd.
And you know what? What we'll do here is, if you're listening to this on iTunes, or if you're listening to it on Google Play or somewhere else, check out spiritwoke.com/USNT. So U is in United, S is in
Universal.
Sam, N is in Nancy, T is in Tom. So just go to spiritwoke.com/USNT. And on that page, you'll find this podcast, but you'll also find a calendar. So I'll get all the dates from Brooke and make sure they're updated for you. And there'll be links to all the places that you can find information about USNT. And so you'll have all that information at your fingertips. So Brooke, I want to thank you so much for being our guest today. It's been the honor of honors. I can't thank you enough for making the time. It's been a truly enlightening hour for me, and I know our audience is going to be hugely blessed for this gift you've given us.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it with all my heart, and I'm so glad to be of service.
Hey, well, we're thrilled that you are of service too, and thank you for that. So, all right, friends, until next time, be well and be blessed.
Thanks for listening to the SpiritWoke Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out our website, spiritwoke.com, and connect with the SpiritWoke community on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search SpiritWoke. Join us next time for another edition of the SpiritWoke Podcast. Namaste.